Seoul is the fastest growing city in the world, already the fourth largest after London, New York and Tokyo. In the 1980s, its population increased by 80%. More than a quarter of South Korea's population lives here, 10 million people, all with their part to play, it seems, in a feverish drive to make their homeland a major industrial power. The land of the morning calm is also the land of the morning rush hour. Over the Han River, cars pour in to turn the downtown streets into a fuming, honking inferno. But the luckiest part of the huge, industrious army that occupies the city by day and withdraws at night arrives by train on one of the world's great subway systems. Seoul became the capital of Korea in 1392. Today, it's the capital only of South Korea. The wave of economic energy on which it's riding was released by the end of the war with the Communist North in 1950. Much of what has been accomplished would not have been possible without the subway as a speedy alternative to the congested roads. Even more than the will to work, a hunger for education binds the people of Seoul together. The subway delivers students to no fewer than 9 universities. Some commute from so far out of town that the day seems over before it begins. Students, workers, businessmen, all with the same goal, a nation moving in unison.
This stop is Chungmuro. You can transfer to Orange, number 3 line.
If ever a place cried out for a clean, fast, efficient, and safe subway, it was the new, frantically expanding Seoul. As a latecomer to mass transit, the city could shop around for ideas. There are 4 lines in the system. The design of 2 was inspired by the Tokyo Metro. The others borrowed notions from London, Paris, Montreal, and San Francisco. But as with everything they do, the South Koreans put their own unmistakable stamp on the result, such as the jagged granite walls in the escalator at Chungmuro station, through which rush hour travelers, many more than use the system at other times, are piped to the surface.
It's probably a problem to the subway all around the world. In the rush hour in the morning, there are 2.7 times more commuters than normal capacity. So, the passengers hardly travel in the cars, and we cope with only 44% of them at rush hour. That is 17% of the whole Seoul population. That is our most important contribution to Seoul.
Once below ground, the harried traveler is soothed by music. Not only are the stations spotless and welcoming, they are extremely user-friendly. A coin in the slot, and most needs are met. The gleaming metro that Seoul set out to build itself in 1974 was completed at a record rate, a mile of tunneling a month. An unusually large number of interchange stations make it easy to move around the inner city. The line that encircles the center, Line 2, colored green, is the longest of its kind anywhere, 33 miles. The last sections to be finished were opened in 1985. They form a scissor shape, Line 3 orange and Line 4 blue. Traveling the 18 miles of Line 3 on the surface would take a bus an hour and a half. The subway can do it in 44 minutes. This is far from being a wholly underground system, however. Of the total track length of 73 miles, only 15 actually lie beneath the surface, and only 17 of the 102 stations. Signals and safety systems are automated, and a radio network links drivers to the control room. Regular training on simulators presents them with situations they hope not to encounter on duty. Unlike some modern systems, this one does not turn drivers into mere additional passengers.
The subway has emerged from modern technology. It is inevitable that it is operated underground. So, we try to show passengers a bright side, even though they are underground using the subway. As I mentioned, each of the 102 stations has its own characteristics, with a mixture of modern and old history.
Whether the spectacular underground decor evokes tradition or, by all its glittering chrome, symbolizes promise, these remarkable places remind the people who pass through them each day that beyond the office for which they are headed, the factory, the hardline politics for which South Korea is notorious, and the lingering chill of the Cold War, there is a nation with a lot of lost time to make up. The new skyscrapers of Seoul are milestones of economic growth. If the present rate continues, by the year 2000, South Korea will be one of the top 10 economic powers on Earth. For centuries, no house in Seoul was allowed to have more than a single story. Now it seems a building must have at least 20 floors for the corporation that put it up to be taken seriously.
Korea has developed so very rapidly. We took less than a generation to arrive here, starting from one of the poorest in the world. Economically and industrially, we do see a very clear change of environment in this country now. In the past, under this collective goal, consensus of the people, that is a simple goal of trying to get out of poverty, it was rather easy to mobilize the national strength. Everybody wanted to achieve the same goal.
Despite what this company billboard might say, putting human resources first does not always seem to be South Korea's main concern. The average worker clocks up the longest working week registered by the International Labour Organization, 54.3 hours. Industrial wages, although they have risen in recent years, are low, an average of $77 a week. And a week is usually 6 days, with holidays a rarity. While the present economic momentum was being built up, the citizens of Seoul were constantly exhorted to put up with low wages and poor conditions for the greater good. They still do, willingly. By any standard, the 16 million strong workforce is remarkably pliable. There is something about this fierce, self-sacrificing dedication to creating prosperity at the cost of any other attainment that makes a lot of people in the capital nervous.
As economic development progresses, people start to entertain different value systems. There's always some gap between expectations and fulfillment. And that gap seems to be widening up in this country faster than any other society I have experienced in other parts of the world. And this creates a sort of internal tension.
times people talk about the Korean traffic. I think in a very real sense, Korean traffic is an outgrowth of this same driving zeal to get ahead. And it reflects itself a little bit on the streets sometimes. But by golly, I'm going to try, I'm going to make it. If I work, I can rise. Having been held down for centuries, now the lid is off and everybody wants to get there, and they've been trying and they've been doing it. Korean people are very individualistic, and so to be head of your own business is better than to be an employee in somebody else's business.
Financially speaking, there are no passengers in Seoul. Despite the shift from agriculture to manufacturing, the number of people without work has dropped. The newspaper seller on the subway, heralded by the electronic chimes in his pocket, is given his concession by a charity that looks after orphans, by getting them to look after themselves. Pushing papers is a better living than working in a factory.
Work starts at 4 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock, and then from noon until 10 p.m., and evening shift from 10 to 12 o'clock. In the morning, usually the sellers are students, and in the evening, the sellers are people saving money for their basic needs.
Basic needs do pretty well out of this one-man business. Selling his quota of 450 papers nets young Mok $32 a day. Now that farmland around the city has been turned into suburbs, Seoul's markets are more important than ever to its residents. These incomparable all-purpose shopping centers offer all the necessities of life and the daily dose of haggling. As with other Oriental cuisines, Korean cooking goes by the rule of 5 flavors: salt, sweet, bitter, sour, hot. Mainly hot. Seoul stinks, literally. The smell of kimchi, pungent, garlic-flavored vegetable pickles that Koreans eat at nearly every meal, hangs in the air, indoors and out. But food is only the beginning. These markets are stacked with fabrics, another Korean speciality. There's a rule of 5 colors as well, the ones most commonly used: red, yellow, green, white, black. But Seoul has acquired broader tastes since its textile manufacturers started catering to worldwide demand. The huge shopping district of Itaewon plays an entirely different role in the city's economy. It caters mainly to the giant American military base in the heart of Seoul, where Commander Bill Myers, United States Navy, is stationed. Like all visitors, he and his family can look over some of the world's best-known brands, on sale for a fraction of the price of the real thing. Forgery of fashion labels, designs, fabrics is a way of life here.
Low price? Maybe later.
Well, Itaewon's a special area, and we enjoy going there. It has just about everything you could ever want to buy. And we enjoy just interacting with the merchants. There's a lot of play between the merchants and the people. You like to bargain. They like to sell their wares. Some of it is quite good. Some of it's not so good. But I think you'll find in general that in Korea, more so than other places I've been, if a Korean merchant has a second article or an article of lower quality, he won't make any bones about it. He'll tell you that's what it is. You know, it's an imitation, or it's it's a second, or what it is. Doesn't try and pass it off as first quality stuff. Itaewon is becoming an independent area of its own, and I don't believe that the American base here is that big of a factor.
여보세요?
네.
얼마입니까?
그거요? 2만 원.
2만.
네. 2만 원.
2만 원?
네.
It's 20,000 won. It's about $30.
Mama said good price.
Okay. We'll come back. We live here.
A lot of Bill Myers' compatriots live here, about 40,000 American servicemen, many stationed at Panmunjom. The Korean War has never been formally ended, merely halted on the armistice line here, only 35 miles north of Seoul.
a demarcation line within this building. It's further extended to my front and rear by 17.5-inch slab of concrete resembling a sidewall. Therefore, those you standing on my left are standing in Communist North Korea, while those you on my right are still within the Republic. Now, if you wish to make a safe crossing into Communist North Korea, ask that you do so in this building. At that end of the table, please now. Also directly to your front, or to your front right, you see a small hill with a tan stripe.
Members of the Armistice Commission have been meeting across this bleak frontier for more than 40 years. In the fierce fighting of the early 1950s, the North was supported by China and Russia. The South was backed by the United Nations, effectively by the United States. That's the way things still stand. The two halves of the country have become two nations. During the fighting, Seoul was occupied by northern forces and all but destroyed. Today, most of its citizens do not want to see their northern neighbors get any closer than this skyscraping flagpole that marks the nearest North Korean village. The ring of mountains in which the capital nestles must have seemed formidable protection in the days of the morning calm. But just as in 1950, there would be no defense today. Seoul is still a front-line city. Fear of a new war, or to be exact, the old one breaking out afresh, gives the Seoul subway a particular significance. Once a month, there's an air raid drill. The streets empty of people. Anyone caught in the open in mid-town must cool their heels for 15 minutes in the nearest underground subway station. Despite these dramatic precautions, reunification with the North remains an ideal, symbolized by one of the most riveting backdrops in the subway system, this vast expanse of stained glass. More than 1 million armed men face each other along the 150-mile frontier that divides the Old Kingdom. But here the threat is outshone by robed dancers and doves of peace. Perhaps a more compelling symbol of unification is the Korean alphabet. Quite different from either Chinese or Japanese, the phonetic version, called Hangul, was invented by a 15th century ruler, King Sejong. King Sejong's alphabet is worshipped, as another country might revere a national hero or a great victory. There's even a national holiday to celebrate it, Alphabet Day, October the 9th. The spread of education since the armistice has been phenomenal. More than half of South Korea's children between the ages of 4 and 6 belong to preschool programs. Elementary school from 6 until 12 is compulsory, but free. All but 5% of these pupils go on to secondary school. The children have much to learn about their country's history, even from the subway. This stop serves the National Museum. Artifacts from a collection that represents 5,000 years of a unique culture decorate the platforms. The gate of perpetual youth through which they emerge is a symbol of national rebirth after the turbulent times the 20th century inflicted on Korea. From 1910 to 1945, Korea was a Japanese protectorate. The long occupation left a conspicuous reminder. The picturesque old gate in the background once opened on Gyeongbok Palace, seat of the Korean royal family. The graceless European-style building, now the museum, housed the Japanese viceroy. In a calculated gesture of superiority, it was planted between the modest single-story Korean palace and its venerable entrance. The transformation of Seoul into a modern metropolis has wrenched its people away from their tranquil Confucian roots. The symbols of their long, if obscure, history have come to bind the generations together. The grounds of Changnyeong Palace are a favorite destination. On their rare days of leisure, the people of the capital crowd into this and the other parks and palaces, which are now counted among the national treasures. Out come unique traditional dresses known as hanbok. Considering the pace of modern Seoul and its unrestrained hunger for the future, it's amazing that such havens survive. But amid the high-rises and grand hotels, these shrines, secret gardens, pagodas and pavilions emphasize the dilemma confronting a people whose present is suddenly so different from their past.
Korean young people have been searching very hard to find out what their cultural roots are. It's quite a common question in Korea today. What is it to be Korean? Not just students, but scholars. What defines a Korean? What is Koreanness? How is it distinct from Chinese and Japanese and other cultures? The students, in part of their search for their ethnic roots, have quite enthusiastically taken up what is commonly called farmers' music. Drums, both the round drum and the hourglass drum, and gongs, and are learning the beats of various forms of Korean farmers' music.
For the busy citizens of Seoul, a moment of privacy or introspection is likely to be as brief as the working day is long. There seems little chance of the new national spirit running off the rails. Resentful workers and students may occasionally fill the streets of Seoul in ritual protest, but when the tear gas blows away, they climb back on board the hurtling economic bandwagon. The evening rush is a little less single-minded than the morning stampede. It peaks at 7 p.m. Not everyone leaves work at the same time. Not everyone leaves work. Night turns Seoul into a different kind of city. The harsh glint of the new skyscrapers is replaced by shimmering streams of headlights and neon. But away from the tranquility below ground, it sounds the same. The drivers are just as aggressive. The blare of 100,000 horns is just one strain in the medley to which the city is marching towards the year 2000. Downtown streets are as full of people at midnight as they are at midday. What they're seeking after dark may not be quite the same as the daytime shoppers, but someone will sell it to them just the same.